Welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Milk and Honey Jewelry. Milk and Honey is a keepsake jewelry company specializing in heirloom quality jewelry made with your very own breast milk. Or placenta, umbilical cord, hair, teeth, ashes, anything. But we will hear more from them later. You can head to Badass Breastfeeding Podcast at .com, badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, and you will find a sponsor page that has all of our sponsors. And if you ever need anything, see if you can give them any of your business because they make this podcast possible. And while you're there, you can scroll down and you can enter your email address, and we will send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are on Patreon, and we are waiting for you to join us there because we are having so much fun with the patrons that we do have. And we have our extra ad-free episodes. We have our mini podcast. We have a monthly Zoom hangout. We have weekly wellness checks where we check in with each other and how everybody's doing, if anybody needs any support. And yeah, you can head to the notes in the top or the link at the top of the show notes, wherever you're listening from. And you can check the tiers and what looks good to you. And we are also hosting our ongoing giveaway still and always for anybody who leaves reviews around the internet, either on iTunes or stars on Spotify or anything that you are able to do from whatever app you're listening from. And send a screenshot of your review to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com. And we will send you a goodie bag of thank you for nursing in public cards and Badass Breastfeeding Podcast stickers. And people do this. We send out goodie bags all the time, so don't be shy. Just send it in and we'll send you a goodie bag. And now Dianne has our review of the week. Oh, Dianne has a goodie bag that she's sending out right now.
Ready to go. Yeah, ready to go. That's what it looks like. That's what you'll get.
Yeah, if you're on YouTube, you can see what the bag looks like.
Yeah.
But if you're not, don't worry. It looks like a regular bag.
Yeah. No worries. The review of the week, I tell all the mamas and mamas to be about this podcast. So helpful for me because nobody in my family breastfed before I did. Such great info. Thanks. This is so common. I feel like that you're the only one. And sometimes it's not like, I mean, because with me, my sister, one sister out of three breastfed, but she only breastfed for a couple of months, whereas I breastfed for a longer period of time. But that was all I had. And I know Abby had, I didn't have any friends that breastfed. I didn't have any friends that were having babies, none of that stuff. And I know Abby didn't have even the sister that breastfed. You had nobody.
Not at all. I had nobody.
Yeah. And it is not uncommon that happens, that you're the only one in your family or you're the first one of your friends to have baby and breastfeed. And you got to get that support. You really do. You need to have that support.
I mean, it would absolutely change everything. If I had known even there was a podcast to listen to about breastfeeding struggles or whatever. And yeah, finding that on that, just the resources online, which back then were different.
Slim. Yeah.
Yeah. And slim. But it made the difference. And even a lactation consultant.
Yeah. And I have found too that even when I have somebody, a client or something that her mother breastfed her, the support is so great, but sometimes the information that they pass down is not accurate. Yeah. So that kind of thing you have to be a little bit cautious about, but they still support you. I mean, they're giving you the support, which is what you need to kind of keep going, which is
remember, I feel like there was on one of our latest myths episode, there was a woman who had a baby and her neighbor, because the baby threw up and the milk was curdled or something. And the woman was like, "Oh, your breast milk's bad.
Yeah.
That means it's rotten. You shouldn't be breastfeeding." And so the person was trying to help, but that's not a thing.
No, that is not a thing. Do not worry about that.
You don't have rotten breast milk inside of you. Nope.
No, you do not. Go back and listen to that myth episode. It was a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the support system is just It's like we don't have
abysmal.
support, but we also just have like it's just so not normalized here. So we have such terrible information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. Yeah, the information can be really, really poor. And we don't deserve that, like you're
No.
trying really hard with this new baby and you deserve to have all the support and good information that you can possibly have. So thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you found us and that you're telling other mothers about us. That really is helpful to us too. So thank you for sharing the love. We appreciate you. Today we are going to talk about things that can cause low milk supply. I know in the past we've talked about like just low milk supply from birth or low milk supply, like secondary low milk supply or something like that. We've definitely talked about low milk supply many times in the past, but we've never talked about like, what if your supply is what can actually cause it to go low? Like, is there anything that you can do throughout your breastfeeding journey that can cause your supply to go low?
Yeah, because we talk a lot about how like actual low milk supply that's not very common. Like people that have like health conditions that cause low milk supply, that's very rare. But there are other things that cause low milk supply. Like low milk supply is a thing that can happen. And it doesn't have to be just like your body can't make enough milk. It just could be that it's not right now for various reasons.
Yeah, for some strange, crazy reason. That it just could be, not making milk for you. So one of the things that can cause low milk is not feeding enough. And that might sound like, oh, well, of course, you're not feeding enough. But this is really like, we need to talk about this because if you're not feeding enough from the start, from when the day the baby is born, if you're not feeding enough, you're skipping feeds, you're stretching out feeds, you're only feeding you're letting the baby nap for 4 hours at a time and you're only feeding, every 4 hours because your baby is sleepy and you don't want to wake him up. That kind of stuff is going to cause low milk supply. And that is because in the beginning, when your supply is becoming established, if the baby is not feeding frequently, your body is just not going to make that kind of milk that we need it to make. So it is going to be, we're going to be struggling with milk supply if you're not feeding frequently like you should be.
Yeah. I mean, your body's getting the message that it just doesn't need that much milk.
Right. And babies should be, and I come into this a lot where people think don't realize that their baby needs to eat every hour and a half to 3 hours. And they're like, oh, I feed the baby probably like every 3 to 4 hours. That's a long time for a newborn. So, I mean, and even if you kind of feel like, well, he was sleeping or, he's not giving me cues that he needs to eat or, whatever. But for newborns should be feeding like every at least we always say every hour and a half to 3 hours, but they usually fall right around that 2 hour mark. Sometimes it is an hour and a half during those cluster feeding times, but the majority of the time it is around 2 hours. And that's the norm for newborn babies. And if we're kind of stretching them out or you're giving bottles instead, say you're like, well, I'm trying to, I don't want to get up for those overnights. My partner's getting up for the overnight feeds and, all of that stuff. That's going to cause a milk supply problem. We really need you to be diligent about feeding the baby pretty consistently in order to make that milk supply we need you to make.
Yeah. Especially in the beginning.
Yeah. And it's the beginning. It's like, especially when you hit like that second night where the baby's just like constantly feeding and cluster feeding and you're like, I don't have any milk. What is the baby doing? I need to give formula instead. And, it is really important to be doing those feeds and it's overwhelming. We get it. We both have been there, but it's really important for your milk supply to be doing those feeds.
This is why I wish that they would in hospitals. Of course, we already know the politics around all of the like safe bed sharing stuff. That instead of educating the public, we just tell them not to bed share. But like we do so much stuff while people are pregnant, and we are like, oh, here's this crib you can get, and here's this rocking chair you can get, and here's these crib bumpers that you can get, and these little like mobile things that your baby can look at when they're in the crib. It's like, okay. And we do have this nesting instinct, right? Where we start with we just get into this craze where we're kind of setting up the nursery and we're setting up stuff. And we have the energy for it, especially when you're pregnant, because when the baby comes, your instincts just kick in and you start preparing. It's a perfect time to tell people like, you need to set up this safe bed sharing situation, because people are going to end up in it. Your baby is going to be feeding all night, and you need to have a situation or a setup where you can allow that. And, this is then people are like, okay, well, I'm just going to I'll just doze off here in the rocking chair because we have this rocker here. It's super comfy. I did it 1,000,000 times. And that's when trouble happens.
Yeah, that's unsafe.
And so we have the opportunity to educate people. We just don't do it. We don't put resources into it.
No, we could be educating about all sorts of really great stuff during pregnancy.
Yeah.
Like, it is unbelievable the opportunities that are missed to educate new families.
Right.
And
we don't want. I mean, you think it's just they stack up these appointments one after another, right? They get you in and out because then they can charge insurance companies more, right? For all the visits, they make more money. They don't spend time with you, talking to you. But I mean, I had a home birth with my second one with midwives and everything. We never talked about any of this.
Yeah.
Once the baby was born and I was like, oh my God, I'm tired. She was like, well, you can lay down. You can lay down with the baby. And I already had, at that point, I had been educated about stuff, and Jack was bed sharing. So we had the mattress was just we had everything kind of set up already. So she was like, just lay down. But there was no let's look at the room. Let's just make sure that this is safe bed sharing and give me, give me some tips. There was none of that.
Yeah.
Because this is why I'm saying this, because people are like, this is so exhausting. Like, if you want the baby to feed all night constantly through the night, how am I going to sleep?
Right.
And the thing is that this is, you should be able to sleep. You should be able to lay down with your baby and sleep.
And of course, and then you get into the whole, and this is why we need education around it, but then you get into the whole, I don't want to start bad habits. I don't want to, the baby's only going to eat all night if we do this. I can't, the baby's never going to be out of my bed.
Yeah. Education around normal newborn behaviors, as we say.
Yes. That is really, really necessary. And we just don't do it. And I've told people in the past too, if you're listening and you have an OB and you're going to OB or a midwife, like Abby just said, she had midwives and stuff and she didn't get that education either. But if you're going to appointment after appointment and you have questions, make an appointment just to get your questions answered. You don't need to have to have an appointment over, I don't know what they're even doing now. I remember I would go in, they'd measure my belly and be like, check your blood pressure or whatever. And then you'd be in there for 15 minutes. If you have questions, make sure they know, I have a lot of questions. There's things I need answered. And what is the best way to do this? And ask, if you need to set up an appointment just to get your questions answered, then do that.
Yeah. How often can they take your blood pressure? They were like, towards the end of my pregnancy, they're like, your blood pressure is kind of borderline. And I was like, I think it's because you keep taking my blood pressure.
Oh my God, I know.
Where did I go? I went somewhere. I went to the sports medicine doctor for my knee, and they took my blood pressure. And I was just like, what?
They took my blood pressure at the dentist.
What?
Yeah. They do. They take my blood pressure at the dentist. They just started doing that probably in the last couple of years. I don't know. But they do it. They bring out their little cup.
If you're about to go under for a procedure or something, but for a cleaning?
For a cleaning. Yeah.
Oh my God. What? It has to be so they can charge for it. That has to be.
It's crazy.
Oh my God. That is so funny. Stupid.
Without them even knowing my health history. Yeah. They don't know my health history. They have zero
concept
have the
information,
of what it is.
And it's like, well, that doesn't mean anything on its own.
Right. It's crazy. I know it's crazy. I know it. the next thing that can cause low milk supply, medications. Now, medications on their own are normally fine. We always talk about that. And sometimes people will be like, oh, you can't take this medication. It's going to go to the baby and blah, 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 all this stuff. Medications are typically fine for the most part. There's very few medications that you cannot take when you're breastfeeding. And a lot of times they're things like chemotherapy drugs, like stuff like that, that you can't take while you're breastfeeding. But instead of worrying about things that are going to the baby or what's going to the baby, which is usually minimal and, doesn't cause anything, I always worry about, is it going to cause a milk supply problem? Because some medications will do that. And nobody tells you that. Nobody says, oh, yeah, this can actually cause a milk supply problem. They don't tell you that.
No.
It's crazy.
Well, they don't. I don't think they know.
Probably not.
They don't know.
They probably don't know. Yeah. But that's all they think about is it going to go to the baby? And yes, that's important. Obviously, it's important to know that the amount of medication that's going to your baby is a safe amount. And most medications, like I said, are perfectly safe. But there are some medications that can cause you to dry up, and things that people take, like allergy medications. Now, a lot of the allergy medications are fine, but things like Benadryl or Sudafed, those can actually dry you up because they're made to dry up. Their whole purpose is to dry up secretions, right? That is the whole point of those medications, is to dry you up so that you're not a snotty mess. And it will dry up your milk supply. And people don't realize that. And that's a really important thing to know.
It's got what's the name of that? The
pseudoepinephrine.
Yeah, that's the particular drug. So you can just watch out for that when you're taking cold medicines.
Yeah, just watch out for that. But that's more of something that that people really should be cautious about. So when you're taking a new medication, if you're unsure about it, definitely ask a lactation consultant. If you ask a pharmacist, I had this happen recently where somebody texted me, a client, she wasn't a client. She was, she's actually a pelvic floor specialist, texted me because she had a client that was pumping and dumping for 4 days, 4 days because of a steroid that she was taking.
No.
Which is absolutely fine for you to take. There is no reason to pump and dump over a steroid. And not steroids like, oh, I'm huge. It's steroids like
for medical reasons. For treating
like prednisone, like a prednisone or something like that. No reason for her to be doing that, but that's what the pharmacist told her to do.
Yeah, because they don't know. They tell you to pump and dump for the dumbest things.
And there is no reason for you to do that. But the question is, you also have that question of, is it going to hurt my milk supply? And that is a really valid question to have, because some medications will hurt your milk supply. So that is really important that you find that out.
Yeah.
We should probably take a break.
Yeah, let's take a break. I'm going to tell you about milk and honey.
Oh, I love milk and honey.
I know. Today's episode is brought to you by Milk and Honey Jewelry. Milk and Honey is a keepsake jewelry company specializing in heirloom quality jewelry made with your own breast milk. Ordering is very easy. You just go to milkandhoney.jewelry to choose your jewelry style that you want. They have necklaces, rings, bracelets, pendants, just you look at the website, you look at this, and it's like, oh, the people are so talented and they're beautiful. So you pick whichever one you want. Then you get very simple instructions for sending your breast milk to them. Milk and Honey preserves your milk and sets it in a stone in a custom jewelry setting. Like I said, they have rings, necklaces, earrings, bracelets, charms. They also have the birthstone, the birthstones that I talked about last time, where you can customize it with your breast milk pendant or whatever you're getting.
Beads. Yeah.
The birthstone beads. Yes, that's what I got my necklace for my mom with the birthstone beads. And if I still was making milk, I think I would make her like a little breast milk bead too for it, because that would be so sweet. I always thought to think about the breast milk jewelry stuff as being like for yourself, which of course, but it can also be a gift to grandma.
Yeah.
Okay, so they also safely store your leftover breast milk in case you ever want to order again. They are a team of moms of 8 women crafting every single piece of jewelry by hand from scratch in-house. And over the last 6 years, they have been in business. They've crafted 16,000 jewelry for 16,000 customers. So you can go to milkandhoney.jewelry and use code BADASS for 20% off. And they also have a DIY kit. You can order the DIY kit and you can make the breast milk jewelry at home. And I actually did this with a different company, but I'm assuming the process is the same. It's really not hard. It's really not hard. You can do it. You think you can't, but you can. It's very simple. So because some people are a little queasy about sending their breast milk out to somebody. I can vouch for this company. They've been around for a really long time. I've known them for a long time. But if you want to just do it yourself, you totally can. And you can get that for 20% off too. Milkandhoney.jewelry and use code BADASS for 20% off. And you can head to breastfeedingpodcast.com and check our sponsor page and see all of our sponsors. And while you're there, you can schedule your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne.
Yes. And don't forget, now I have the ability to take more insurances.
Yes.
So if you are wondering if I can take your insurance, reach out to me and we will get it figured out and hopefully be able to set up a consultation. But yeah, just even if you're just curious, hey, can you take my insurance? Reach out and we'll figure it out for you. Okay.
That's really cool.
Thing. I know, it is really cool. I'm really excited about that. There's no reason why anybody shouldn't be doing it.
Yep.
Okay, next one, not pumping to replace a feeding. And this is another one where people go, well, of course I'm going to pump to replace a feeding. But the important ones is during the night. And people don't realize that. I get a lot of people that say, well, my partner's going to feed the baby during the night, or my partner's going to give that nighttime bottle so I can get a little bit more sleep. Or the partner says, well, I want to give the bottle during the night so she can get more sleep. That's a great, wonderful, thoughtful thing for you to do, but you still need to pump in the middle of the night. And people don't realize that they need to do that if they're missing a bottle or if they're missing a feeding. So if you are missing a feeding, you have to pump that feeding. So whenever you have somebody giving a bottle for your baby, you have to pump that feeding so that your body knows that you're still making that milk for your baby. So it's kind of a pain, right? Like, and I don't mean it like that, but when people say, oh, just let me give a bottle for you, it'll be so much better, it'll help you out, blah, blah, blah. But it's really more work for you. So it's like, I can see if you're like going out somewhere or whatever, and you have to leave a bottle for your baby, absolutely. But if there's a way that you can like be like, okay, I just fed the baby, I'm going to be gone for like 2 hours, you should be fine, you don't need to give a bottle, blah, blah, blah. But if you are going to miss a feed, you have to pump because your body's going to fill up and you're going to get uncomfortable too. Your breasts are going to fill because your body knows when it needs to feed the baby. So you're going to get uncomfortable. You're going to be full. You're going to be leaking if you don't pump. And it's going to be risky for plugged ducts and all of that stuff. So you have to pump because your body needs to know that you're still making that milk for your baby. And like I said, the biggest time I get people kind of pushing back on that is overnight. And I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. You can't hate the messenger over that because that's your body at work. It's not, it's not my fault. I know it's not my fault. I keep telling you to wake up. But it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. You have to stimulate for a missed feed. You have to. If somebody's giving a bottle, you have to still pump.
And eventually you don't have to do it. Like it gets better as the baby gets older. The baby can sleep a little longer. You can let that go a little longer. But in the beginning, it's just so important to establish that milk supply.
It really is. And really like the biggest time I get that is in the very beginning when it's so like, it's meant to be such a nice thing. And it's meant to be really thoughtful when partners say, I just want to give a bottle during the night so she can sleep. And that is a really nice thought. It is very nice to know that your partner's looking out for you and trying to be helpful. But in the long run, it's really not that helpful. And there's no way around that. You're just going to. And I tell people, like, if it comes down to it, if you would rather, what I tell people is have your partner get up, change the baby's diaper, get everything ready, bring the baby to you. You don't even have to get up. Just, and this is another thing where if the baby's sleeping right next to you, you don't even have to worry about it. But if you're not bed sharing, your partner can put the baby right there next to you, feed the baby, and get back up when the baby's done and put the baby back down, get the baby back down. That is easy enough. You don't really have to get up and do anything. Or if you'd rather your partner give a bottle, get up, pump, and go back to sleep. But you can't skip that piece of it.
Or you have your partner use your breast as the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
So they get up, they do everything. They bring the baby over to your breast. They sit there while the baby's eating. You're sleeping.
Yep.
And then put him back.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Reswaddle them, all that stuff.
And if you're queasy about bed sharing, that's something that your partner can do too, where while the baby's eating, sitting there, making sure everything's okay, so you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry, but some people do worry because it's so not normal in our culture.
Yeah.
That the partner can just be there monitoring.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And that would be a really helpful thing to do instead of saying, hey, pump a bottle so that I can do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Would be much better.
Yeah.
So that's what we recommend. Not that people care about what we recommend, but.
Well, maybe. I mean, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. I mean, come on. It'd be so much easier. But,
yeah.
I don't know. It is really hard because in the beginning is tough, right? The beginning is just tough.
It's so hard.
And nobody wants to be up every 3 hours. You just want to have a stretch of sleep.
When Jack was a baby, I never slept 3 hours.
Yeah.
That was never, I mean, if you're sleeping 3 hours, like that's a night's sleep.
Well, sometimes what happens, and I remember, hearing people say this, my niece had said this too, they'll be up, like they get up, the baby fusses to eat during the night, cries, whatever. You get up, change the baby, feed the baby, get ready to put the baby back down. Then the baby poops. And then you got to change the baby again. And then you got to put the baby back down. And then it's time, by the time you get the baby back to sleep and you get back to sleep, you got 2 hours to sleep before they're up again. And there might be 3 hours between feeds, but you might actually only get like an hour and a half to 2 hours to sleep. So it's like people blame the breastfeeding for that. And it's like, no, that's just babies. Right. That's just your baby being a baby. You can't help it if they're going to poop in the middle of the night and then you got to change their diaper and, you got to change them 2 or 3 times before you get them back to sleep. That's just babies.
I know. I was just watching, it was like Rebecca Meeke had a little, if you follow her Instagram, she does these short little videos and she was talking about babies waking up and something about like night weaning. I can't remember what it was, but I think the gist was like, so your baby's breastfeeding through the night, you want to wean because you don't want your baby to wake up. But it's not breastfeeding that makes them wake up. It's the fact that they're not developmentally ready to sleep for long periods of time. So they wake up. It's a normal thing. Like you can't get them to stop waking up by changing their feeding. And some people are like, well, my baby, I don't know, or my friend's baby sleeps longer. Like they have they was giving them formula and they sleep longer. And some people will like overfeed their babies with formula or put rice cereal in the bottle to try to get them to sleep longer. And it's not safe. That's why these things are aciduous, because it puts them into a deeper sleep than they are developmentally ready to be in. So they're waking up because that's just how they're wired. That's what they're able to do at that age.
Right.
No matter how you're feeding them. Yeah, people blame breastfeeding for everything, but it's not. They're just being babies.
Right. You just can't rush the process.
Yeah.
I mean, we all want to sleep. And that's why we always say, like bed sharing is great because you can get that sleep and have your baby sleeping, because babies do sleep a lot better when they're next to you. But it is really hard because the beginning, especially when your babies are really little,
Mm-hmm.
they're developmentally, like Abby said, they're just not ready. They're not ready. And we can't force them to be ready. And that's really hard. So you got to get through it the best way you can.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's just trying to get like a plant to grow faster. There's no way to do it.
So the next thing is stress. And this is not like, because what parent is not under stress? What new parent is not under some sort of stress, right? But what can happen with stress is that it can impact your oxytocin letdown. It can impact how your milk lets down. It's not like stress does not impact your milk supply directly, is what I want to say. But it can impact how your milk lets down. And if your milk doesn't let down, then that's going to impact your supply over time. So yes, it can. I see this more with parents when they return to work. That is when I see this the majority of the time, is if they return to work, especially if it's a situation where it's not a supportive environment, or it's a highly stressful job. And then you're trying to fit pumping in on top of that. And it's already hard enough to pump sometimes and to let down to a pump and then you're in a stressful situation. Like, it's really hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. It's really hard to have a letdown when you're all tense.
Right. Exactly. So that is where we kind of get that stress coming in. I don't think I've ever had anybody say, oh, I just like lost my milk supply over being a new parent. Like, the stress of being a new parent made me lose my milk supply. Yeah. I don't think that's happening to the majority of people. I think it's when you have like these extra stressors in your life that are really compounded and just make things really just that much more difficult for you.
Yeah.
And let's face it, returning to work is a really difficult thing to do.
I can't imagine. I can't even imagine.
It's just, and then you're trying to like pump and figure everything out. It's just a lot. It's a lot. And we don't have the kind of support around it that we need to have.
No.
Which is why it's,
Which is not returning to work so fast.
Right. Yep. And I had somebody ask me the other day, is there a law around people that are working from home? And there isn't, because that's a fairly new thing now. Working from home is new.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Nobody did that before COVID, really. Not to the extent that they're doing it now.
Right. Right.
So do we need new laws around that? Maybe we do.
Yes. All of the work related laws should apply when you're at home. There's not enough of them, but they should. Yeah.
I know. I was like, just follow the laws that are there. But, when your work is being difficult.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you're following everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really hard. So that stress. So the things that you can do is really, trying to relax. That's
just relax.
Just relax.
Calm down. Jeez.
Yeah, that's not helpful. But doing things like, if you can, mindfulness and relaxation techniques and, deep breathing, things like that can really help you to kind of reset and relax and hopefully make things a little bit easier for you.
I've heard of people, they'll record on their phone their baby crying.
Oh, yeah.
Which will stimulate a letdown for some people. And, or like bringing like, something that your baby was wearing that smells like them.
Yeah. Pictures of your baby on your phone.
Baby, yeah. Little videos of them.
Yeah. Things like that can be super helpful. The crying thing. I had somebody speak one time, say that somebody said that they were being mean because they taped their baby crying. It's like, why weren't you trying to soothe them? It's like you just left them there crying. It's like, that's not what was going on. It's not like you were like, oh, cry, poke, cry, and then videotape
bonk them on the head, make them cry, record it.
Yeah. Like nobody's doing
They're
that.
just crying all the time. Record it one time.
I know. Oh God, I know. But whatever helps you, and just try to get those, that stress level down. It can be it can be hard, but knowing that this can impact your milk supply might help you to, relax a little bit more. And try to keep it. Yeah. But yeah, that's it. So there's not a lot of stuff.
Did we talk about the return of your period?
Oh no, we didn't. You're right. That's a good one.
That'll affect it, right?
Yeah. So the return of your period can make your milk supply lower as well. And that is because of the hormones that are going on. And usually it happens during ovulation. The hormones of ovulation will cause your milk supply to dip. So it's not like the time that you're having your period, it's the time that you're actually ovulating. And a lot of times people will notice this if they're ovulating, or that you might not even know if you're ovulating, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, why does my milk supply seem lower? I was, especially if it's a pumping parent who's maybe you're back to work and you're pumping and you said, oh my gosh, I got, an ounce of milk when usually I get 2 ounces of milk. That is when people notice that their milk supply is lower. And sometimes I'll be like, did you get your period back yet? And they're like, oh, maybe that's what it is. So that a lot of times can cause that, but it'll rebound. It'll come back up. Yeah. It's just during that time frame of you having your period and ovulating that is going to be a more difficult time. If the baby's feeding, you're probably not going to notice it because your baby's going to control that milk supply. Your baby's going to demand that supply. It's usually with pumping that people notice it.
Mm-hmm. And being sick.
Yeah, being sick can do it too.
But also rebound.
Yes, it will. And sick, we mean like you have a stomach bug, things that can really like tax your body a lot. Mm-hmm. Not if you're just like, oh, I've got a cold. That's not going to, impact your milk supply. But if you're like sick, you're probably going to feel it. Birth control pills or certain kinds of birth control can sometimes pull your milk down, your milk supply down. So definitely a lot of times people say, well, this is fine. It's not going to bother your milk supply. There's certain kinds of birth control pills that have lower hormones in it, and those should be fine. A lot of people say the IUD, which is very, very popular now, is not going to impact your milk supply, but everybody responds to hormones differently. So it can still impact your milk supply. We just don't know. Make sure if you're doing a birth control, it's something that we can reverse. So something that we can take out of your body if it is causing a milk supply problem. Yeah, if we need to. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.